Hello and welcome back to the podcast. If you ever wanted to hang up your laser measurer one day and walk away from a estate agency with a fantastic income and then go sail off into the sunset, I've got the two perfect people on the podcast today. I've got the one and only Lucy Noonan and Laura Cooper. So let's jump straight into it because I can say that selling lettings and estate agency businesses is quite a niche. So how on earth did you end up with a business that sells estate agencies?
I've worked in the industry about 26, 27 years, but then for the last 10 years, purely worked in acquisition. So I was a buyer basically. For LSL, so acquiring for brands such as Your Move, Reeds Veins, and then I was at the Lohman Group, so I was the acquisitions director there. So I'd done various roles in there, from project management, integration, negotiation, and I kind of saw a gap in the market, that the information that was being presented via other business transfer agents probably wasn't as what we as a buyer needed, and also I think felt that some of the brokers weren't very approachable and supportive. And it's a big thing. We speak to people, don't we, a lot, and they say sometimes they've spent more time in the business with their family, and it's a massive decision for them to sell. So also being that support. So launched Tomic 3.5 years ago. I had a plan to do 12 a year. To project manage on behalf of buyers, really, because that was my area of comfort. I project managed, looked at businesses. So I initially looked at just project managing on behalf of some independent buyers. And then we quickly moved into the brokering space. And I think we've done 115, 116 completions now.
Yeah.
We've got a deal pipeline of about 18, 9 for sale. And Laura joined me a year after I launched.
Yeah, so I've been in the industry about 15 years now. So started at a little kind of property manager junior neg role at Hunters Estate Agents, and then kind of worked my way up the ranks really to managing 3 of their group owned branches on the letting side. Then ended up, as everybody does, have kids out the industry for a bit, then back in, and then ended up in franchising and resales, which is obviously where I met you, Chris, as well. So, and then kind of got to marks with acquisitions, mergers, resales of the franchise businesses. And that's how kind of Lucy and I met, kind of crossing paths. And then I was just kind of up for a new challenge and saw Lucy making headways in the industry and doing what she does incredibly. So I thought I'd jump over to the dark side of mergers and acquisitions and joined in 2022. So been here, 2.5 years now.
Yeah, not many people know this though, that I actually live in Nottingham and Laura lives in York. And when she came for, I'd say interview sounds a strong word. I was dying at that point. I was like, please come and work with me. We actually both went to the same school. We were just a couple of years below you were a couple of years below me. And I only realised when she sent me her personal email, it had her maiden name on, and I was really good friends with her brother at school. So it's such a small world, but we both worked at Hunters years ago, so it was quite natural. Yeah. But the first thing you said when I went, "Are you brothers with Simon Doswell?" I'm nothing like my brother.
Get in there nice and early.
Yeah, exactly. But now we've got a team of 5, so it's not just Laura and I, although we are the faces, as it were. We've got, but we complement each other. We're completely different, aren't we?
We are completely different. Lucy, I don't know if anyone knows, is a bit more of an extrovert. I'm probably more the introvert behind the scenes, but I think it works so well. I think everyone says, we complement each other. So as a business, it's going well.
Yeah.
And I would say that from the outside looking in, because I remember when I first launched my business, obviously just before you launch, obviously you Google the life out of anything that is like estate agency and consultancy and coaching and all this sort of stuff. I remember you guys come up quite a lot sort of thing and sort of looking at what you did as a business. I was like, oh, they do selling of businesses. It's okay. They're not competition at all. So I remember stalking your websites, back a couple of years ago. And even since then, you've kind of, what's what I'm looking for? Like blossomed? Is that the right way of doing it? You kind of like, I'll get the swearing in early, nice and early here, Lucy. It's like no fucks given. You're like, this is us. This is what we do. We have fun, etc. Now, is that something you purposely set about when you went from sort of those larger sort of corporate companies like LSL, for example? Was it kind of a case that you wanted sort of to spread your wings on that side, or what? Talk me through the journey there.
Yeah, I think I had always kind of been I've always loved to dance. I've always had a big personality. Even on my wedding photos 15 years ago, I've got thumbs up. When I had my daughter, the first photo of me holding my baby is me with my thumbs up. So it's not something that we've created. That is just who I am. But when I was working for the bigger corporates, I was asked to moderate my behaviour. I had to dial down really, kind of who I was. And I think one of the things that I'm really passionate about now is you can be authentically yourself and have some fun, but you can also still be really professional and offer, a first class 5-star service. And out of the 16 completions, we've got 5-star reviews on it, and all of them. We are here to have fun, but this afternoon I'm going on to a multi-million-pound purchase agreement call where there's going to be, corporate solicitors, big law firms, big financial firms, and I can hold my own. We know what we're doing, so we're very professional in what we do. We've between us, we've done probably 600. We've worked on 600 acquisitions, so there's nothing really that we've not seen. But at the same time, for most of the clients that we work with, they've never done it before. They don't understand the difference between an indemnity and a warranty, and sometimes solicitors will make it sound really complicated, and we try and make that process simple, and also support them, because we have a thing called seller's remorse, don't we? And it's just before completion, sellers panic and they suddenly realise that they're actually going to sell. They've got to tell the staff they are going to exit, and it's quite an emotional moment. And that's something that I believe we're probably one of the only brokers that really understands that and gets it.
Massively. And I think, to be honest, you say about kind of the behaviour, the flamboyancy and the friendliness and the personality. I think that's what makes us different to other brokers in the industry. Lucy and I both come from very corporate backgrounds, and certainly one thing that attracted me to work with Atomic was the kind of nature that we put out there. We are a lot more personal, and as much as I cringe at the statement, we hold hands, we guide sellers through the process, and like Lucy says, they haven't been through it before. A lot of them, they don't understand the process, so instead of kind of having a half-faced corporate person there, we're there doing our kind of TikTok dances, but also we know our stuff, so we've got that kind of backing and knowledge, but also we're quite friendly and approachable. So I do think that's what kind of sets us above the rest.
Yeah, go above.
We can say above. We can absolutely be biased on this podcast. We don't mind that in any way, shape, or form.
We've definitely ruffled some feathers.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. So, because I would say that it's a very trusting relationship. I think obviously the more people see you and they more kind of get to know your personality, the more they trust you. Because I think if you guys were selling my business today, I'd be like, Lucy, Laura, like, how much is it worth? And you'd be like, it's worth this much. I'm like, now what do I do? Just tell me what to do and I'll do it, sort of thing. As you mentioned earlier, the amount of time that people spend within their business day in, day out, it's like they're like extra child sort of thing. They've kind of loved and grown from their first instruction to their 100th instruction sort of thing. So there's a huge amount of commitment and sort of blood, sweat and tears they put into that. They probably want people that are experts in their field, that actually know their stuff and kind of know it through and through. But also they're like, but we know you're good people and we feel like we know and trust you as well.
Yeah. I think what I find really surprising is a lot of estate agents and letting agents, when they come to exit, they try and do it alone. Or they'll try and just sell to one buyer. And I'm like, you guys value houses, you go in and to them. If someone knocked on your front door, you wouldn't accept the first offer. And we're seeing that more and more at the moment. And then they come back to us to ask us to help to negotiate. And we're like, actually, if you did a full marketing campaign and we launched to market via confidentiality agreements, NDAs, we'd work with you if there's no one that you didn't want to sell to. But you've got to maximise the value. You've got one shot, we believe, in maximising the value of your house, your business sale. And some of the larger buyers, they invest a lot in marketing and PR, purely to make out that they're the only buyers in the market. We've got 11,000 buyers registered on our database within 3.5 years looking to grow via acquisition. So it isn't just the main buyers that you constantly see in the trade presses buying. There's loads of them. And even if they are those buyers, we're here to make sure that we get the best possible deal for you. And that's not just the overall price, but what is that deferred consideration looks like? What is the restrictions? There's lots of things around selling a business that I think if you've never done it before, or even if you have done it before, if you've not got an intermediary in the middle, you're not going to maximise the value. And we see it quite a lot, don't we?
To add on that as well, I think it's remarkable how people do just take one offer and just accept it. I find it so bizarre because when we go to market, we'll have a selection of offers usually, and the range of that offers is absolutely insane. It can genuinely vary by hundreds of thousands of pounds, or deferred elements they can escape on day one or be tied in for 3 years. There's huge factors. Without testing the market fully, then how do they know that they've got the best offer on the table? And a lot of the time when we get the selection of offers, it's not always the highest offer that gets accepted. A lot of people are drivers of, they just want to leave the industry immediately, so they will take the highest balance on day one but defer for a shorter period of time. So it's what we always say to everyone, it's about everybody's circumstances different. Why would you just take the first offer?
A little bit of the, I think it's called the Solomon paradox, which is where you're fantastic at giving advice to people. So agents might go around to people's properties and be like, yeah, hold the market, we'll get loads of offers, we'll build up lots of interest sort of thing. But actually the advice you give yourself is terrible. And actually you don't listen to your own advice in any way, shape or form, and you ignore that. And you're like, oh yeah, but I know Terry from down the pub's going to buy it and he said he'll do handshake on it. And you're like, no, you tell people this for a living sort of thing. Do you find there's very much sort of a mindset that people either kind of get it or don't get it sort of thing, and they either kind of have that mindset of, yeah, obviously I want to get in front of as many people, obviously I want to get in front of 11,000 people and kind of market it that way, and then the others that are just like, yeah, but just the guy down the pub wants to buy it?
Yeah, I mean, we when we launch a business, it's via region, so not every buyer will get the if we're selling, like we're launching one today in Kensington and Chelsea, so it'll just be the London buyers. So a buyer in Scotland wouldn't receive that. And again, this particular seller is very nervous about confidentiality, so wants to approve every buyer before going under an NDA, and we can do that. That's absolutely fine. But yeah, we know the buyers, that the main buyers regularly. A lot of the time when we're launching one in Taunton tomorrow, and pretty much it's probably between 3 already, and we've not even launched it to market because we've sold 3 businesses in that area in the last 18 months. So we know that market really well. So again, it's structuring, it's making sure what is the funding position. And that's something that we've definitely seen a difference in the last 2 years, particularly, is we're really passionate about supporting independent agents to grow via acquisition, but their biggest barrier is funding. The high street commercial brokers, while it's not like getting a mortgage, like a decision in principle when you're buying a house, a commercial broker will say, yes, I'll lend you 500,000, but actually then through due diligence they might go, actually I'm only going to offer you 400 now, and so then you've got 100 grand deficit. So funding is the biggest challenge for buyers, but from a seller's perspective, a cash buyer, sometimes even if it's a lower overall deal, it's more secure. So funding is a big thing, and the rates are now a little better than they were 18 months ago, but it's still expensive. But funding is expensive.
And I presume there's lots of combinations of sort of payout and buying in sort of methods sort of thing. So it's not like, let's say, for example, you're buying an estate agency for £500,000, for example. It's not like you're turning up on day one and going, there's £500,000, for example. I'd imagine there's lots of sort of various, I'm trying not to use the word schemes, but sort of processes involved where you go, great, actually we'll pay you sort of X amount of money per month over the next sort of 3 years, and you get a lump sum payment at the end of it. Like, is there sort of different models you kind of lean on that side?
Yeah, exactly that. There's so many different deal structures that you can attain. Obviously people who sell to their staff as well. There's management buyouts where it'd be a share option. Routinely, we do see kind of a large proportion paid on day one, and then the seller can walk away with that. And that's kind of ring fenced with no clawbacks usually, or what we aim for. And then obviously there's always a deferred element to the deal. Now, the reason for that is everybody knows with lettings portfolios, there is going to be a level of attrition to that portfolio. So the buyer is buying the income. So they also need that protection that when they buy that income, it's not just going to disappear. So effectively, that's the reason for it. And that's also something that we have a bit of difficulty explaining to sellers as well. A lot of them think we've valued it right, they're going to get that lump sum up front and be able to walk away and sail off to the Maldives with it. It's not always the case. Additional to that, sales as well, the sales pipeline businesses, a lot of people don't realise that they don't get paid that aspect of their business up front. With sales, like Lucy's mentioned, very difficult with funding. So in terms of that, they'll usually have an element paid, but not until each individual property completes. So again, it's a learning exercise when we value it to explain that they're not going to get all of it up front. It's very rare for that circumstance, albeit we have achieved it. Is becoming a bit more common, I'd say, over the last couple of months, actually, that there are businesses out there that will pay all up front. And that's because the market's really, really hot at the moment. So buyers are kind of up in the game to get businesses and put a foothold in the lettings portfolio.
So let's talk about sort of valuing businesses and sort of how you put a line on the sand with regard to the value side. Now, I would imagine, from my point of view, the lettings business is a serious chunk of that. So let's assume that we've got an estate agency with a sales arm and a lettings arm as well. What's your first point of call when someone says, how much my business is worth, Lucy and Laura, what can I get for it, sort of thing? I guess your next question is, how many fully managed properties do you have?
Yeah, well, it's actually kind of more based on the income, really, and where that income comes from. So, I mean, the amount of phone calls we get every day just saying, what's the standard multiplier? There is not one size fits all.
I don't want to use a broker, but what's the standard multiplier? Is it 1.5, 1.8, 2 times?
Yeah, I've been told I can get 2 times.
And if it is 2 times, what would be you up front? So you can clearly see that they just ring, and that's fine, but they're ringing to work out what they think it is. And if it was that easy, everybody would do it. But Laura, honestly, hats off. And I don't just say this. Every deal we've worked on, particularly the multi-million ones we've done, this girl knows her figures and how to value businesses. Like I just neg them. I just broker them. I'm the one on the phone. But Laura, even if it's a pound out, she gets really stressed.
I cannot. I am military down to position, and I've learned to let go if it's a few quid here or there. But I can't cope when things don't match. I'm a figures person. I love figures. I love stats. I love everything about that. So, but yeah, it's frustrating when people just kind of say, what's it worth? It's not. We can't just give an answer over the phone. That's why they need to fill out our forms. It's all based on the different revenue streams. As you've mentioned, lettings is more valuable than sales insofar as it's contractual, guaranteed recurring income, and therefore the monthly management income does carry more weight than your kind of let-only renewals. And what we're finding as well is there's so much uncertainty with the renters reform and things like that. With renewal fees, people are already starting to say, well, actually, I'm not going to apply a value to that or a lesser value. So each income revenue stream carries a completely different multiplier, which is why we kind of take a look at it based regionally across the country as well. And apply it and kind of calculate a format. And then obviously we give the total value. Sales completely different. It's only based on kind of the pipeline value, which again, a lot of sellers struggle to hear. They've built those sales businesses up for years and years and years. And for us to say the value is only with your pipeline, unless you're a huge agent with several branches with great kind of market share. So yeah, unfortunately not one size fits all. But we offer free valuations.
Yeah, good you. Like a shameless pitch. We like that.
Only if you're looking to sell, though, because our form is we call it a business information form. Yeah. And that's click thing. But what do we call it in the office?
Oh, we call it a biffy chop.
Biffy chops. You've got a biffy chops in your box.
Wow. Okay.
Who doesn't love a biff in the box?
Biff in your box. A biff in your box. That's what we call it. So I just called it biffy chops for you, Laura. And Laura goes off on values. But the larger businesses with sales element, there is an earn out or there is a higher value, but you've got to be market leader, at least first or second in the majority of locations that you operate in, to achieve higher values on estate agency. And we'd love to make estate agency more valuable because we earn more, but it just, unfortunately, it's the funders that don't like it. They don't like the peaks that we've had in 2021, then the drops. We're now in a peak because everyone's trying to get through before stamp duty. And it's that funders don't like. But then that's the difference of lettings, is they like it it's constantly coming in every month, regardless of what's going on.
And in terms of kind of value, we value from a brokerage perspective, we value on the kind of turnover, the income that comes in. A lot of people kind of ask the question, well, what about the profit? I'm a really profitable sales business. Then effectively, we don't know which buyer is going to buy that business, and we don't know how they would treat it. They might close offices, get rid of staff. They might be a huge corporate agent that has commercial savings and post-completion cost synergies that they can glean. But effectively, we don't know who the buyer is and we don't know their plan of action. So we value based on turnover, unless it is a multi-million pound business. We'll do an adjusted EBITDA based on our kind of suggestions of what they should do and how a business is run. So yeah, it's
EBITDA is just a posh word for profit, basically.
Yeah.
And would you look at let's say, for example, you had a pipeline in place of £100,000, for example, and obviously this is very high level. I appreciate there's nuances to individual agencies, etc. If there was a sole pipeline going through, I appreciate on the sales side alone, that's probably where most of the value is because obviously available stock could sell, could not sell, who knows effectively. And would you look at it and go, right, okay, you've got £100,000 worth of stock going through. We know that your fall through rate over the years is 25% or whatever it may be. So therefore, £75,000 that we can kind of bank that going in. Would you look at then they would then want a discount on top of that, or how does that sort of math equation work?
Weirdly, that you've used those two numbers, 75 and 25.
Yeah, so that exactly that. So
Oh,
effectively,
it's something I'm made for it.
there is an industry standard for the sales side, and that is routinely about a buyer will look to pay about 75% of the sold subject to contract pipeline, and that's obviously because there'll be an element of fall throughs going through, and then additional on the market stock, so anything that transfers over that's not sold, not agreed, they'd look to pay about 25% of that. There will be caveats that they need to earn that money and for the on the market stock, sell that property and glean the commission from it within a period of time, say kind of 6 to 12 months. And then that's when the seller will get the payout for that 75% and 25%.
Cool. Well, thank you for the big up on the 75/25. Proof that a broken clock is right
Yeah.
twice a day.
I
Um,
thought you knew. I was like, how have you got that figure?
oh,
Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. You know me. So let's talk through. So with regard to the letting side, what things that can devalue a lettings portfolio? I would imagine, at a stab in the dark here, a one big client, one big sort of landlord who has 10 properties, 20 properties, 30 properties in that portfolio. Does that devalue that portfolio slightly? And what other things also drag down the value?
Doesn't necessarily devalue a business, the multi-landlord, but they might want to ring fence that potential income over a longer for deferred consideration. So if that landlord stays, then they'd still realise that same value. Ideally, you don't really want more than 30% of your portfolio in an ideal world being classed as a multi-landlord. We class a multi-landlord of owning 5 properties or more. Some buyers class it higher, some class it lower, but we class it as 5. Staffing costs is probably a big one at the minute, and obviously that's just going to increase with all the NI changes and things that we've got going on. But realistically, you shouldn't have more than 40% of your overall turnover should be staff. Now we're seeing some like 80% of their turnover is staff costs. And that has a massive impact, obviously, on the profitability. But we've got one where it's hugely overstaffed. Really, they've got, I won't give the numbers, but 20 members of staff, and really it should only be 10. But a lot of the traditional established agents, they've not adopted tech in the same way. So they've still got, someone coming in every week to do the payroll and to pay landlords, and it's an Excel spreadsheet and they write everything down. And they do need to adopt tech because that does then affect the profitability. But the main one, and I always say it for any conversation we have, the one thing that you've just got to be really, really clear on is your figures. That is the one thing that it drives us crazy.
Yeah,
that they'll say we have a sign that says circa and approx, because if we see that, we're like, oh good God. Because if they're turning over 100,000 and they go it's around that, okay, and what is lettings turnover, what is sales, and if you can't your systems, or you can't work with your accountant to break down that turnover, that is going to affect the value of your business.
And linking that back into earlier in terms of the valuation, because we apply a different multiplier to each income revenue stream, the amount of people that come to us and say, right, this is just my total turnover, we don't know how much of that is your guaranteed monthly recurring income from your properties, or just one-off contractor commission fees that they're never going to earn again, or setup fees or renewal fees that might be discontinued. So that's why we need that breakdown as well. So yeah,
figures.
Yeah, it's a bit like when people go on Dragon's Den and it's like, oh, what'd your business do last year? And they're like, I haven't got a clue. And it's like, what's your profit margin? I think it's 30%.
To be fair, though, I do get it, because when you're working in the business so much, you don't have chance to work on the business. So we're before we came on this call, we're looking at our marketing budget, and I hadn't got a clue what our budget was, because that's what Laura, manages. So we do get it, and we will help people to get the information together and get it broken down. But it is you before you go to market, or even if you don't use a broker, you need to know your figures, and they need to be easily to be. You can't just say, "Oh yeah, my accountant said I did 50 grand in lettings and 50,000 in sales." We need to then back that up with your CRM system, or show that your client account is, the monthly income is there. You can't just say, "Oh, it's that." So yeah, definitely, figures is the most important thing that a seller needs to get in place.
And one thing, this is very much a how long's a piece of string question, so sorry in advance. So, how much does personal brand play a role in the value of an estate agency business? Because obviously everyone these days is, build a personal brand and it'll be all about you and get your face in front of camera, etc. And let's say, for example, I run an estate agency business and it's the Chris Webb Show, and it's all about me and what I do and everyone knows me sort of thing. And I grow a good lettings business, good sales business, but it's basically kind of through my name. And I go, I want to sell my business, and then sort of Jeff takes over or Margaret takes over, and everyone's like, "Who the bloody hell's Margaret?" sort of thing. So how much does that sort of affect positively or negatively the sort of the valuation of a property of a estate agency business?
There's no brand value,
Okay.
and that is really sad. And we just sold one. It's just completed actually in a place called Ipswich, and the estate agency is called Thompson's. It's been trading since 1933.
Hmm.
So it's, 90 years. Is that right? 90 years old?
Give or take, yeah.
About that,
Close.
yeah. The figures person, me. And there was no brand value seen to that. They're going to actually keep that brand for a period of time. And actually, one of the things, and I do think the self-employed model, and the different the movement we've got at the moment in the estate agency market. So with the self-employed and the franchise models that are coming in, we are seeing that actually that's affecting brand value even more, because there's so much more competition, and there's so much more of these self-employed models coming out, that actually that's affecting the brand on an estate agency side. There is a brand value when you get to about 4 to 6 offices and you're in really good, strong locations. So can't say we've got a really big one going through at the minute, but Martin Bar that completed in October, KFH that's completed, Sterling Ackroyd, these kind of brands that have significant offices in various different places, that does then have a brand value to it. But one of the things with the self-employed models as well is they're very much focused on estate agency only, and that I do think that a lot of these business owners that are launching their own business in estate agency, they're not looking at their exit strategy and their retirement plan, because if you're going to be just a pure estate agent, there's not going to be a massive amount of worth to your business when you come to exit. It's literally going to be your pipeline and your instruction register, like we've said. So, I really do want to urge people that are going on that self-employed model or becoming a business owner themselves and launching a estate agency, they need to think about lettings or their exit option when they want to retire, because otherwise there's not going to be a huge amount of worth to it.
You read my mind. I did a podcast, which is probably it's gonna be about 2 months ago now by the time this comes out. And literally it was about having an exit strategy from day one, and how lots of agents come on board and they kind of go, "Oh, I'll just do this for a while." And you're a bit like, no, but what's the goal here? Are you gonna like sell the business? Are you gonna kind of just die with your laser measure in your hand one day, sort of thing? Like what's your plan in the future? Can I go from, I think lots of agents come on board and kind of go, "Oh, I'll just do this today and I'll just see how it goes." And you're a bit like, yeah, but at some point you'll want to do something else, or go on holiday or retire or do something. I don't think many agents have that sort of in mind when they set off to start off with.
No. And you are either an estate agent or a letting agent, and I get that, but having lettings is important from a value perspective, from an exit perspective.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, a lot of people should have the exit in mind, regardless if it's going to be kind of 5, 10, 20 years down the line, because the reason that we sell, I mean, it's completely variable now. It's not just people retiring, it's people that are wanting to get out of the industry, or they just wanted a new challenge, or health concerns, so many different reasons. So people just think, oh, I don't need to worry about it, I'm not in my kind of 60s, 70s. But what our concentration is when they come to sell, is a buyer is buying the income. So although there's, and I think marketing is great, and I do think people should buy and improve their brand, but the amount of questions we get every day, like you say, what's the value to my brand? buyers will look to buy the income, and 9 times out of 10 they want to bolt that portfolio, that lettings book, the sales pipeline into their own brand. They don't need a second brand, like Lucy said, until you've got to kind of 4+ networks where your top market share in that area and those locations, then they're not going to continue the brand, which is awful to say, and it's a horrible conversation to have with people, but it is what it is, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can understand that. So talk me through then. So what would be if someone was looking to sell in the next couple of years or so, or next foreseeable future, what would be your sort of 3 tips for them to look at in their business to kind of make sure they gain as much value when they exit their business, but also make sure it's as smooth a process as possible?
Figures.
Oh, that's what I was just about to say.
I thought that might be one of
Take
them.
on the
Sorry,
figures.
Chris.
Yeah.
We're just really hammering figures today. Figures.
So yeah, figures as well. And obviously, as we've spoken about, the golden ticket of anybody's business is the lettings recurring monthly income. It's contractually guaranteed post completion. It's what people will apply the highest multiplier to when they're looking to assess the value. So try and kind of bump that up and use that as a concentration area. So instead, we have agents now that are coming to us saying, I've scrapped my setup fees and I've just increased the monthly management fee.
Right.
Absolutely brilliant, because that's where the highest ticket item is. So put in all of the income on that, and in terms of other things, compliance checks and things like that, whack it all in the monthly management, increase that, but just say, look, there's no other fees, because when they do come to exit, that is what's going to get them the most income.
I suppose it's all about building that enterprise value, isn't it, in the grand scheme of things?
Yeah.
And I would imagine, not putting words in your mouth here, I would have a guess that the final third one outside of figures and the letting side of things is to look at your kind of your profit margin and sort of where you're spending your money effectively, and sort of make improvements on that with regard to whether that's staffing, whether that's tech, or whatever it may be, and kind of make that as sort of as streamlined as possible.
Yeah, I mean, a good way to look at that is to look at your direct debits. Because if you've got a direct debit, there's normally a contract in place there. So looking at that, but I'd say one of the third one I would say is looking at the structure of your business. So if you are most businesses will be a limited company. And again, if you're not looking to exit for 3 to 5 years, actually having a lettings limited company and a sales limited company and an auction limited company, if you did that, or if you've got various different facets, having separate limited company under a holding co, that then gives you options, because the value of your lettings business, if it's pure lettings, is going to be worth more overall. So we've seen several businesses, so Smart Homes up in Solihull, Alexandra May in Bristol, there's quite a few. They've just sold lettings and they've kept a state agency, because for them, Preston and Baker in Yorkshire is another prime example. They've sold the asset of lettings and they've still continued to do sales because they've got a good brand presence where they are. They weren't at retirement age, but they could see and realise the value of lettings. So again, looking at structure and making sure that you get good tax advice as well is important, because unless you love paying money to HMRC, then there are ways in which you can reduce your tax liability.
You love paying HMRC.
I get so irritated. I don't mind paying corporation tax. I don't mind paying VAT, but every month a piece of me dies when I have to pay PAYE, because I'm employing people. They have to pay tax. Don't even get me started today, Chris. That really irritates me. It annoys me.
Can I add a fourth?
Oh, go on.
Can I add a fourth on business? So reverse due diligence. And the amount of things that we're getting up at the moment is that when due diligence is coming up on the business after they've sold, is there's gas safety certificates missing, EICRs missing, terms of business is coming up more often than it should do. So before you look to sell, to make sure that you're not going to be hit by that German due, just do it yourself. Just get either an audit in or just do an in-house audit. Just check that everything's in order, because a lot of business owners kind of step back from the admin side during the course of their ownership and rely on their staff and their team, but very rarely it gets checked and files get done, passed down, staff leave, things aren't passed over. So just do a reverse due diligence audit, because although it wouldn't routinely affect the value of the business, it will affect potentially the way it's structured. There'll be more value retained because there's issues with the portfolio. Things like prescribed information. So yeah, it's really important that you kind of look in advance of selling for a good 2 to 3 years and start planning to get the business in tip-top shape before
Tip top.
Tip top. That's a
Tip
new one.
top.
Something
I actually remember doing those due diligence checks when I was at the property franchise group, when people who were potentially think about selling sort of thing, and going to their filing cabinet and grabbing a file out sort of thing, and going through, has he got an EICR and has he got an
yeah,
EPC? My least exciting job in the world I think I've ever done, and I would avoid it like the absolute plague. But it was actually amazing how many things I'd go through. I'd be like, yep, that's missing, that's missing, that's missing. Right, next file, that's missing. And it would be like,
yeah.
oh my God, like there's so much stuff missing. So obviously, if you can tighten that ship up before you think about selling, I presume that puts a better package forward for the potential buyer to go, we've got our stuff together. This is what you're going for.
Yeah.
No business is perfect though. So we do get some sellers that are really concerned that they've had like a landlord for 20 years and they can't find the terms of business. Like, don't worry about it too much. I always say if you can go to prison because of a breach, that's an issue. So, make sure your client account is reconciling and you've not stolen client money. That's a big risk. Gas safety certificates, the key ones are really, really important.
Yeah.
But no business is perfect.
No, we're yet to find one, I think, that hasn't got a single missing document. But
Okay.
Yeah.
No one's losing sleep over Legionella. So
Oh no.
so talk me through. So to go back to an earlier thing you mentioned in the conversation, Lucy. So you mentioned obviously the way you sort of had to sort of tick the boxes and tone yourself down slightly with regard to the estate agency side of things when you're with the larger corporate companies. So talk me through, because obviously you are unapologetically yourselves these days, and sort of nothing sort of epitomize that more than what I think was probably one of the best things I've seen at a conference slash event almost ever, and that was Lucy taking to the stage and dancing to "Spice Up Your Life." I think it was one of the various Spice Girls remixes. So talk me through. I know we hear in the world a lot about women in estate agency these days, which I think is absolutely amazing, and I love it to pieces. Why is it still so important today that women are represented in the correct way in the estate agency world?
Love that question. Obviously I'm a committee member of Women in Estate Agency and and spend a lot of time. It's something that I'm massively passionate about. Even I had massive imposter syndrome launching Atomic Consultancy. So I actually resigned 3 times, and they convinced me to stay. I then did something probably not very professional, and then then it was really time for me to go. But we've both come from humble backgrounds. We're not, didn't have loads of funds, but I had 3 months basically of money to pay my mortgage and get going. And it was literally, I've got 8 weeks to make this work, or I've got to go and find a job. And that is scary. And I think one of the things as well that I've realised is a lot of men will probably make that more jump, whereas women, we do overthink sometimes, we panic, of things. So I did stress about that. But, I've throughout my career, I was just tits and teeth, asked to moderate my behaviour. And that had a large impact on my career and, how I was perceived and wasn't myself. So I knew that when I launched Atomic, I was going to be 100% myself. And if people didn't like it, then I was going to have a problem. But it was nerve-wracking at first. But, it was, I think you've got to feel the fear and do it anyway. And I was absolutely petrified doing those dances and things. But, the amount of messages I've had from people just saying, it's just so nice to see, you've made me realise that you can be yourself. And still be professional. But don't get me wrong, we've had some absolute twats, haven't we? Like, we had one called us an amateur broker, and it's very much a man's world down here. So I rang this buyer up and said, "Hi, it's the amateur broker from Nottingham here." Unfortunately, there is still, I mean, that was about 2 years ago, wasn't it now? But, the great thing is no one can sack me. So I just picked up the phone and was like, you don't talk to anybody like that. And I'm quite protective, aren't I, of the team, is, if you're not going to treat people with respect and professionalism, then we're not dealing with you. And I'm very, very clear on that. If you're going to be a dickhead, sorry, I'm just going to swear, then we're not the company for you. That's absolutely fine. And I'm cool with that. So we're not for everybody, and I get that, and that's why there's options and choices out there. But for me, it's making sure that as an industry, we're supporting and being given equal opportunities and creating positive change. So, the amount of men that were at the conference this year was fantastic. And we are creating now a movement, I believe. And, we've now got a lot more female senior representatives. But it is that we do have a man now that works with us, though. So we're not a full female team now. So, we are diverse as well, but the other way around. But yeah, massively, massively passionate about just supporting women as much as possible and driving that positive change.
Fantastic. Well, I'll be very public in saying I love you both. I think you're absolutely amazing. I think you're great advocates for women in estate agency and for anybody who wants to see how to run a business and be absolutely boss at it. I think you guys are absolutely awesome. So this is the easiest thing to say. If anybody wants to get in touch with yourselves, apart from seeing you on all over their social media, how is the best way for them to get in touch with you guys?
Just go to our website, atomicconsultancy.com, and then there's a get in touch button there, or just reach out to either of us on LinkedIn. Yeah. So, but yeah, really enjoyed chatting.
And people can fill out what's it called? The chops form.
Biffy chops.
Biffy chops.
I shouldn't have said that now because someone's going to say it. It's called a business information form, Chris.
Let's keep it professional.
Absolutely.
I will tell you one last thing. One last thing. So when Laura joined me in 2.5 years ago, you have to make up a project name for an acquisition because obviously you're not allowed to say the actual company name from a confidential perspective.
I wondered where she was going with this then.
And so Laura came in and she said, so what's this project name? And I just went, well, I don't know. And she said, what? She goes, well, you've got them all as numbers. She said, there's no system. And I went, no, I just make up a number. She went, what? You just went, and it was 212. And I just went, just call it 212. And she was like, oh my good God, is that how you've been working? So we now have this thing where we go 212 if Lucy's like,
a nightmare
yeah. So now it's all structured. We all have proper project names. It's all working. But this is where we're completely different. I'm just very much like, let's get the deal done. I know, am I an SPA inside out? This one nearly died.
I'm the background operations person. I'm like, you need processing. We need to get the figures to match to the penny. Yeah.
So that
very different.
You need to create your tribe. And it has been hard for us to do that, hasn't it?
It has, yeah.
But we've got a great tribe now.
No, but music to me is I think the best teams I've ever worked with have always been exactly that sort of way. There's always been like yin and yang, and one person's like the sort of out there salesperson, the other person's like, well, let's just calm it down slightly. Let's do it. Let's
rein them back in.
Absolutely.
She wouldn't let me spend a budget on marketing. I was like, increase that a little bit. She's like, no, we're going down here. So we had to meet in the middle this morning.
Guys, thank you for coming up. It's been absolutely brilliant. So thank you so much. It's been really kind of you.
Thank you so much, Chris.